That's right.
So we
It's
were.
exciting.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. Go for it, Matthew.
I was just saying, what an exciting way to meet as well. It's good, really fun topic, and looking forward
Yes.
to it.
Yeah.
So we were just catching up a bit. This is our crew of RevOps Masters, Tara, and if we are the super friends, definitely have Wonder Woman and Superman over here to Ariel and Matthew. Matthew was just giving us a little bit of insight into what the first week is with his second born and all the nuance of trying to sneak in some sleep here and there. And then Ariel was just letting us know about some exciting news on her side. So this is the RevOps Association, you said, Ariel?
Yeah, so it's the RevOps Associates, but they have partnered with the RevOps Co-op. So that's another community as well that they're going to launch this through there, but it's also available outside of the community as well. It's a Slack community, but
Awesome.
outside of that as well. Yeah, for sure.
So she's got a really exciting partnership opportunity, it sounds like, or will finalize the partnership opportunity this past few
Mhm.
weeks, so which is exciting. We talked about that last time around. But before we go ahead and get started, why don't we just maybe do some quick introductions, this just between this team, and then we'll just go ahead and get our webinar kicked off and probably have to do it again, but I just want everybody to get a chance to know one another, make introductions and just become friends before we record today's session. Ariel, do you want to just go ahead and get us kicked
Yeah,
off?
sure thing, sure thing. So I'm Ariel. I go by Ari, but I am the founder of Infinitely Elevated, and I am the RevOps career coach. And so I specialize in helping folks uncover their go-to-market niche and then how to accelerate their careers. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Ariel. Tara, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I am the owner of Atomic Revenue. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary
Woo-hoo.
this year.
Wow.
As of yesterday, I am now an internationally best-selling author. We launched a book on Wednesday.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
Yes.
that is number one in 19 categories. It's on 64 best-selling
Oh,
lists.
Wow, Tara.
And it's a bestseller in 6 countries. So that's kind of a big deal. It's a new thing. It was the first time that I've participated in a project, but myself and several other women each wrote a chapter in the Unsung Heroines of Business book that was published on Wednesday. So
wow.
that has been exciting. I guess I have to go add that to my profile now. That's what they keep telling me.
Yes,
So
yes.
but yeah, other than that, I've been, I always tell people that I was in the gig economy before people knew there was a gig economy, and I was a virtual worker when we did it on fax machines and flip phones in 2005, and I've never looked back. So I'm kind of like a pioneer in so many things that are mainstream right now. And I always tell people that being a pioneer is incredibly, incredibly painful because no one knows what to do with you. And it was the same thing with Atomic Revenue when we claimed the term RevOps and we said that we are your revenue operations company. If you search for RevOps on Google, there was a 1986 paper. That was the only thing that showed up was a 1986 paper. We were literally the first like to claim RevOps as what we do. And now so many people talk about RevOps and it's in everyone's mind something entirely different than what we think RevOps is. And so I do find that fascinating. And again, I'm going to say that being the pioneer is not an easy place to be. It's really painful. No one's been here before, and you do a lot of education. It's very expensive, and you get a lot of bumps and bruises and, you know, things along the way.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why my book chapter is called Surviving the School of Hard Knocks.
Mm,
So
Ooh,
yeah.
great.
Okay.
That's a great chapter title. Okay.
Yes, I love that.
so
D- Terry, before I sort of introduce myself, I'd love just to get I was trying to jot down the title, but to make sure I grab that before we get off the call. That's I'm looking for. They'll be right at the bookstore, following this
yeah.
call this weekend.
Well,
Um,
connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll see the link
okay.
in there that you
Okay.
can buy it on Amazon. It's only $1.99, the ebook version.
Okay.
It extended through this morning, so I don't know how long that's going to last, but
Okay. Okay.
it's called The Unsung Heroines of Business.
A business. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
what a great topic. Um, yeah,
So,
pardon me as I multitask. I'm looking you up right now on LinkedIn to
yeah,
tell you. That's, I'm looking forward to digging in.
thank
Um,
Absolutely.
you.
yeah. Here, I'll quickly sort of introduce myself. Yeah, I'm Matt, Matthew when I'm in trouble with my wife. So Matt is preferable, I guess, at the moment. Yeah, I am a recent father of two. Looking forward, Ariel, to those pointers, that looking glass into what's coming.
Yes.
On the professional side, I at the beginning of this year launched Vistara Advisory, focused on sort of commercial tech stack support, process automation, backstopping, etc. I have a long background in revenue operations, as it is now, and widely in our zeitgeist. But prior to that, largely in commercial analytics, market landscape analysis, etc. Um, and recently, I partnered with a firm, Cogent Analytics, as I'm trying to grow my business. But and it's really been an interesting evolution. But exposure to some really interesting small, medium-sized enterprises where we can. I don't want to say it's a testing ground, but it is a very interesting incubator for some of the sort of changes in how we understand um, the the processes backstopping commercial operations, revenue operations, trying to help them better understand that bridging between sales, marketing, customer success, et cetera, and maybe improve those dotted lines to solid lines of communication and creation. But that's who I am in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, super excited to have everybody here today. I know we had a little bit of a hiccup. I'm not calling your newborn a hiccup,
Yeah,
Matthew,
yeah,
but you
yeah.
know what I mean? In terms of scheduling, I know that babies are a little bit unpredictable. That being said, super excited to have you all here today. You three are among some of my favorite people in the world, particularly when it comes to discussing revenue operations and all things growth. As you all are aware, we are here to chat about ideal client profiles and the revenue equation, how driving profitability, or excuse me, driving profitability through alignment, which I think is something I'm super excited to talk with you all about in terms of your individual subject matter expertise. Matthew, obviously you've got a broad set of skills, but if I were to, sort of consolidate that into one word, I would argue that you are sort of the data guy. Ariel, in my opinion, you are the people person. And then Tara, you are a Swiss Army knife. And I think that's three words, but you know what I mean? We'll just go ahead and run with it. And through that lens, in my role as moderator, as a community manager of the RevOps Masters community, as well as a project lead responsible for just understanding the different facets of our customer acquisition strategies. Tara and I were having a conversation several months ago related to ideal customer profiles. I think something just to consider is the maturation process of our ICPs through this lens of time, right? And if we were even considering who maybe was interested in this concept of revenue operations in 1986 versus, right, who that person is today, there's certainly some things to be considered as it relates to the challenges, the pain points, the solutions that were available then versus, being able to understand what that customer journey is today. And so, Tara, I'm not sure if you're 100% prepared to talk about this, but I do know that we had talked about this, business case study and insights around profitability, account distribution, and segmentation, and wanted to perhaps give you the floor for a bit before we get, directly into the panel and start going through some questions.
Sure. I appreciate the topic of ideal client profile and working with companies. I actually just had a meeting this morning where we were talking about, when you're a service provider, you really want to help people. And so when people come in that aren't your ideal client profile, technically you can help them and you can, and you want to help. However, your business loses money, loses resources, can't do the best job possible, doesn't deliver all the value that you promise or that the client needs within their budget or time frame when they're not your ideal client profile. And so we talked a lot about when you keep it true to who does your business best serve based on profit, based on, you know, ability to deliver the greatest value based on shared successes, then everybody wins. When you deviate from that ideal client profile, someone's getting cut short. And so we do a lot of data analysis with clients to figure out who their ideal client profile is. And so, Matt, you probably do a lot more of that than we do. But it's
I
really
love it.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to see how companies have been in business for generations or even just decades, millions of dollars in revenue generated, and they've never looked at the companies that are buying from them, which ones are profitable, which ones are not, which ones are worth pursuing and putting your money to go get more of those customers, and which ones are not, which ones are contributing to ROI on all the initiatives you're paying for, whether it's people, whether it's systems, and then which ones will never get you a payback period that's reasonable. And there's so many companies that we've gone into that have, the payback period is 2 to 3 years on the client profile they're going after with the marketing and sales tactics they're using to go after them. Well, can you really afford to not make money for 2 to 3 years and to continue spending money? So by adjusting the client profile, we can find those clients where you do make money in year one, even if the, lifetime value of the customer is 10, 20, 30 years. You don't have to wait 3 years to make money if you're going after the right clients now. So those are some of the things that I love to figure out with companies. And between us on this call, I think all of us need someone who's outside to help us figure that out, because you're too close to it when you're inside.
Mm.
And so you can't see it, and you're justifying all the decisions you've made over the years and, justifying how it feels to serve those companies that are not the right fit. And you're not willing to look at all of the negatives associated with it. And it's hard to fire clients. It's hard to tell them no. So I think this topic is really, it's important because it hits home on things that are really hard to do, that take a lot of discipline, and it's difficult to see for yourself. So I love that all of us can look in from the outside and, help companies, get out of their own way, get out of the way of their own success in a lot of ways with this ideal client profile topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And I would love to maybe open the discussion up to Arriel and Matthew in, sort of the simplest terms. How do you go about the process of defining an ideal client profile? And, I think Tara, shared some really great insight into why profitability is more important than just revenue. And so if we are then identifying those different client profiles, understanding how to prioritize, right, who we are going to market for and after, excuse me, who we're going after and how we're going to market matters in the form of, well, we need to make money, but we also need to make money and be profitable so that we can continue to grow and to be a business, right? And so, my question is to you all is, how do you define an ideal client profile? And from that perspective, how do you get your customers to understand why profitability is more important than just revenue?
My lens is a little bit, actually, Matt, did you want to go first?
No, I was actually
Okay.
going to ask you to take it away.
Okay, thanks. So I'm actually in the B2C market currently. But there was a lot of overlap in what you were talking about, Tara, because I'll get to your point about how do I go about defining the ICP, but I will say from experience, when I deviated from my ICP, it was much harder to prove value for my client. It was much harder to see the ROI at the end of our engagement. And I felt like I poured in so much more effort into like the educating and the uplift and the setting up for success, and even on my side. So it is required to grow as a business. I think every time we step out of our ICP, we learn a little bit about ourselves, about our business, about how we support our clients. So I don't want to take away from that or negate from that. But to your question, Terrence, originally around how do I create my ICP, I said, well, where do I need to serve the most? Right now, there's a saturated market with, executive career coaches. And I said, well, there's actually a study that now supports this, that there is a huge talent gap in terms of what's going to be the biggest risk in business in the rest of 2025 as far as your revenue growth. And so if we're looking at talent, if we're looking at the people, how to identify which people need the most help? It's the mid-career individuals that don't necessarily have the super engaging managers that want to build them up. People, I even see it on like from job descriptions and even the interview questions that my clients are asked. They want you to come in and be able to hit the ground running. So what that means is there's no option for you to really learn from the team and grow right from the start. You really have to take the bull by the reins and say, I'm going to command my own growth, my own professional development. And so those are the types of folks that I work with. They are motivated, they want to grow, they are problem solvers, and they want to be able to serve their companies or future companies even better than they have before, not just through tooling, but through their own skill sets and experiences as well. So, yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, and look, and I'm going to jump in here, Terrence. So I don't know if I don't want to step on your words either.
No,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, I want to compliment what Arriel was just saying, and Tara, to your point as well. I mean, ICPs are iterative, and you're going to be dealing with different businesses, different departments, et cetera. I mean, yeah, no doubt when you're dealing with coaching, et cetera, there's certain outcomes, and their measurements on ROI are going to be a little different. The same thing when you step back and you go into manufacturing, electrical manufacturing, or pharmaceutical, or SaaS based. There are these different objectives, and so Terrence, to your question, I think important here is, you know, stepping in and having that sort of iterative and ongoing dialogue with leaders to understand what their business objectives are. Why is it that they want to or why, and then what do they need to define as their ICP, and what is it really going to inform for them? Certainly addressing revenue, but maybe you're optimizing how your marketing spend, chasing that revenue goal is going. What types of campaigns you're going after, segments. I mean, not all enterprise, ICP are going to be gold standard or tier one. Equally, not all non-enterprise are not going to be tier one. So what are your segments? What are you defining, and how are you going to work through it? And really, what are you trying to achieve? Lead generation, so product development, something along those, to that customer retention. I think that ICP serves multiple purposes, and certainly, Arriel, having those conversations that you do to get at what are you trying to understand with this identification. And Tara, I mean, I love what you're sort of you mentioned earlier in terms of chasing after revenue, absolutely, but how are those systems integrating and talking to each other? I mean, how are you collecting insights and feedback from your ERP to guide some of those decisions around customers that you chase if it's not just revenue? I mean, yes, you can think about customers that are going to pay on time versus those that are always continually behind. And those data, and yeah, you call it out, Jared. I mean, I love the data, and I definitely geek out on the data. But what can you dive into and look at? And the other underpinning thing here with that ICP, and Terrence, to your question, and one of the core, I think, pillars of it is it has to be iterative and it has to be constantly changing. And so you have to be adaptable. And as you get those data points that are coming in, maybe there are economic headwinds that are affecting customers in your top tier, your gold standard, your silver, or even your platinum, whatever, however you define it. And are those really going to be detriments, or do you need to refactor your ICP understanding based on true economic hurdles, or et cetera? But to that point, Tara, that you're mentioning earlier, is, I mean, that data, that what is the data telling you, and then how are you building your ICP to regularly leverage, integrate, and then help interrogate what your ICP is defined at any given moment. But it should be sort of iterative. So hopefully, without being too abstract,
Oh, that was,
No.
yeah,
yeah. Oh, sorry. Well, did you wrap that up, Matthew?
yeah. I just want to say, I mean, hopefully it complements, because Arriel, Tara, exactly what you were getting at, and I think I just want to make sure that I'm complimenting those underlying messages. They are critical, and I think they're
Yeah.
core to that defining principle of an ICP.
Mm-hmm.
I think oh, sorry, please go for it, Ariel.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was gonna say, just the insights on that iterative process, Matt. Like, you have to look at the signals that are literally right in front of
Right.
you and say, okay,
Yeah.
where do I need to adjust? Where do I need to tweak? Who's
Early
engaging with me really? And is that indicator of success, or, to your point, a detriment or distraction to what I'm trying to build and how I'm
Right.
trying to serve you best? Not
Right.
just right now in this moment, but also as I think, Tara, I don't know if I'm going to jump too far ahead, but I did read your article about your ICP of the ICP. And so just thinking long term, and we need more of that when it comes to the ICP. I saw it as like, we use a lot of the bow tie method in RevOps, but I'm like, let's just flip it to like an hourglass. Like, let's figure out how to like bring it all together and then iterate as we go, and continue to use the insights, the data that is literally at our hands, to inform how we move forward and how we continue to serve our clients.
Yeah.
I think one of the data sources that is so overlooked, and I think both of you have mentioned it, is our teams that are working with our clients. And there's so much to be said about job satisfaction. It's very expensive to recruit and hire new employees. And when you go out and you get clients that are not your ideal client profile, it might not even show up financially, but it shows up in the satisfaction of your employees, and it shows up with the people who carry the burden of having to adjust how we do things or deal with clients that aren't culturally a fit with what you're trying to offer. And it's very, very expensive to replace employees. But if your employees love the clients that you bring in because they are a fit, and that also reduces operational costs and employee turnover and team satisfaction. So I think that's also an area not to overlook when you're gathering data and iterating your ICP, as well as in the ROI of getting the right clients.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just having a quick meeting, like a meeting of the minds, to say, we probably need to reconsider our ICP. What could that look like? Let's talk about some of the best clients we've served, and what are the attributes or personalities or personas that they have that makes it successful and makes it easier for us all to work together to serve them. And then let's talk about the challenging clients and what those experiences were like. And let's see, do we actively say that's something we're not going to focus on in the future? Or do we say, how do we bring some of these folks into the fold, so maybe they're not as challenging, but they're also, an opportunity for us to learn and grow as well? So not just totally, pushing companies or people to the side, but how do we really take a look to brainstorm if there's something more we can do?
Yeah.
Please
Sorry,
go
Terrence.
for it, Matthew.
I'm gonna comment one more area. I love that, and because for the longest time, and I still continue to think about this. I mean, I think about ICP as a total addressable market solutionizer. But yeah, the other side is, do you really want to continue to address that? Does that total addressable market need to change based on those
Mhm,
outcomes
mhm,
from
mhm,
those findings? And certainly with your customer success managers, when they're dealing with people, data points again, like, are we integrating NPS scores regularly? Are we factoring that into our ICP? Do we need to, and how do we weigh it? Because some of that stuff is subjective, bad days, etc. But Ariel, I thank you for bringing that up, because again, I continually come back to ICP as a TAM answer or a way to help address and figure out what your TAM is. But there's that other major part of it, which is, are these clients right? Do we want them? Are we servicing them appropriately? Are our segments changing? And as a result, we need to now adjust. So no, I appreciated that comment very much.
Anecdotally, or, what I love to look at, or just recently is, I love movies. I'm like such a film guy. And you could break movies down, historically into, the action movie, the drama movie. Now we've got this whole category of superhero movies, but, with the advent of streaming, that has totally reinvented the average movie-going experience, right? Where I know I've subscribed to, 3 to 4 different platforms, and if I'm unable to get to the movies, I'm just like, oh, well, before you know, it's going to be on Netflix. And even if I do go to the movies, like half of the time I've got, total like rabbit brain, and I'm like on my phone while watching the movie, like the entire movie going experience has completely changed. And, that's not unique to me. I would argue that that is just the state of the entertainment, the film industry as it is now, right? And I think to that whole point, if we are so married to this concept of our ideal customer persona that we are not taking this holistic view of the market, right? To, I think, using Matthew's whole point, we are probably missing out on, aspects of, right? And then I think to that whole point, we're probably focusing on the wrong customer segments that aren't going to keep us in business long term, right? And, I would argue that the customer journey has probably expanded here in 2025, right? And that is, as much of the process, in my opinion, around, being able to have that cohesive relationship with our ICPs, being able to understand, well, hey, those 5 or 10 touch points maybe aren't enough anymore, right? We really need to understand who you are
Oh,
and
yeah.
that lens of data, right?
Mhm.
So I think my next question, you guys have done like such a great job of answering even like the first 5 questions that I've had for you. So, I think my next question, and this is directly related, and Matthew, I want you to get this kicked us off here. In your experience with go-to-market and with data systems, how does the ICP impact technology decisions and our account strategy?
Sure, no doubt. No, thank you for the question. And it's, this is one of my favorite areas. This is a big data area for me. So Tara, yeah, you guys hook me if I start wandering down that rabbit hole, because I tend to. I just get excited about it. But yeah, Terrence, I think, first and foremost, ICP as a filter for tech investment is, a big part of this. Helps prioritize like what types of CRM, implementation are we going after. If you're a small, medium-sized enterprise, maybe Zoho's big in, or a low lift, or HubSpot is ideal for you, because that's your investment, and you can work a lot of these same ICP factors if you define your personas, if you know the firmographics that you're interested in. So that ICP, I think, can help drive some of those decisions, maybe at the enterprise level, or marketing automation. If we start thinking about what tools we use there to help, and where we want to invest to help drive, that end objective, like achieving better revenue, underlying revenue growth. I think that it's a critical facet in making some of those tech stack investments. Data architecture, provides clarity around what types of fields you need to capture. I mean, if you're integrating with ZoomInfo or Dun & Bradstreet, what data sources you can use. I'm helping a client now build out their initial ideal customer profile. It's a family-owned business. They've been around for, the business has been around since the early 1900s, but no ICP has ever been really done. And so when I went in, there's, who is your client? Well, they didn't even have a CRM. So there's, how do you start to build that out? So the data sources that you need, I wanted to define industry. Am I going to use ISIC codes? Am I going to use NACE codes? Am I going to use SIC codes? Where does that data sit. If you invest in a CRM, now where are you integrating it to? So I think that's a big part of that as well. From an architecture standpoint, the role that ICP plays in that, and guiding some of those decisions around how you build out your platforms, what information and data you want flowing into them, and then to where. And the account strategy linkage, I think, is also, I mean, hugely critical, right? Defines which accounts warrant high touches. I mean, Terrence, you just mentioned that, like, from an NPS score, like if you're hitting that continual threshold of sort of in between 7, 8, like, how do we push them into a promoter, that 9, 10? Like, are they continually hitting? Like, are we getting that feedback? And then we address like that to that headcount, Tara, right? Do we have the right person sitting in that account? Is it a different type of collateral this person is regularly catching up with? Are they integrating in their CRM regular updates, notifications? Hey, it's time to touch base with this client. Hey, we have upcoming webinars that need to be filled in, or this webinar is going to fit this type of constituent much better than the other. And so I think that at that level, the ICP plays a critical role in account strategy and making those linkages. And really, I think as well, it helps. One of my biggest challenges, every client, every business that I've ever worked in, you have tech, and particularly now more than 10, 15, 20 years ago, but you have tech bloat, right? Everybody's chasing after the new, and advent of AI. There are wonderful tools. I mean, like, we have Read AI, we have Fathom, we have a whole list of, and some companies have 6 or 7 of the same AI technologies, speech technologies. Well, why are we doing this? I think being able to understand your ICP, and back to that original part of tech stack investments, it helps avoid or should be used or thought about in terms of helping to avoid tech bloat. I think hopefully that sort of rounds out that answer for you, Terrence. But from a technology decision-making ability, I think ICP plays a critical role in all levels, from architectural development, the investment, and then really the continually retrospective analysis of what you have in place that is helping to support you in that ICP decision-making process. Do you have too many tools? Is there a data deluge? Is there so much information that you just don't know how to make decisions? Is it handicapping you? And as part of this sort of the role of ICP in its impact on technology, I think it can help you address, like, hey, I'm not getting the answers I need. I'm not getting a clear persona. I'm not building a clear segment, and I'm chasing after all these different data points. Maybe we need to look at what we really have and tool back, et cetera. But anyway, hopefully that addresses that question.
That was amazing, and I see Tara wants to get tagged in. So Tara, I'm going to go ahead and call on you to add some additional insights.
So I love this topic about the tech stack really being able to help you isolate and segment your ideal client profile. And I think one of the challenges that we have in operationalizing the ICP is some of the information is readily available and easy using AI or databases to put into your systems, like revenue or employee count or title, things like that you can find and you can put into your system for your total addressable market. You can run some campaigns off of that, but where we're now seeing more opportunities with technology, and it's easier with less technology components versus more, is that our ideal client profile reveals itself along the client journey. So you can easily identify size and industry and some of those factors. And then you start to get into the things that have to be discovered. Right? Cultural fit. One of the things that we learned early on at Atomic Revenue, we specialize in technical professional services. And we learned that if a corporate structure is structured as a partnership, we have a lot harder time delivering value, getting agreement amongst multiple partner owners versus if it's structured as a corporation. The decision-making structure is different. And so I think some of those things you really can obtain the information, but it's a little bit harder to discern how company decisions are made until you get into the sales process. And that's where I love the tech stack matching the client journey. So at this stage of our relationship, we're gathering this information and putting it into our qualifications questions and putting it into the system. So that way we know later how to account manage or how to run campaigns to that audience, because we learned those additional parts of the ICP that are not publicly available in databases. So beyond who the decision makers are, but are our core values aligned? Are we all valuing, process? Like if you are a process oriented company and process is important to you and your ICP hates process and they're just freewheeling all over the place all the time, you're probably going to have a challenge. But how do you identify that that company doesn't appreciate process and is never going to follow a process and therefore is not a fit with you as a provider?
Yeah.
Tara, I just want to just piggyback on that a bit, because there's that quantitative and qualitative analysis. And so, and with that, within that ICP, and then I'm going to co-opt this back to some of the technology component of it. Yeah, part of this gets factored into how you score them. Do you have a mechanism for adding that variable to that qualitative that cultural variable to indicate, is this a gold standard? And it is iterative, because that culture is constantly changing. So yeah, Tara, I absolutely 100%. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up as well.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that too. I was like head nodding over here, like my head was bouncing to music. But yeah, alignment with the core values, and then also, your client's propensity to want to do some change management. Because if, like to your point, Tara, if they're freewheeling in like, oh, I'm loosey goosey, and you're like, I'm all about process, it's really not going to work. But then also, how do you maybe educate and say, you know what, if you really like to work with a firm like ours, or if you really want to work like a coach like me, this is my recommendation on how to start with some change management, how to start with some data gathering and putting things to the side, so that we can start to get you to a place where you are a better fit for our ICP, and so that we can serve you, so that we can prove value and show ROI on everything that we're doing and take you along the way. So like you're at least seeing if they have, an aptitude to want to even get started on some type of change, to be able to see the benefits on the other side. So yeah, head nodding like crazy, but that definitely spoke to me for sure.
The other one that I love, so I can talk about process because that's one that's hard for us to discover, but the other one for atomic revenue that's very difficult to discover within our ICP is accountability. Like, we are very big on accountability, and you get into these companies and it's very difficult to discover during the sales process, and even until you start working with them, whether or not they're actually going to do the things that they say they will, or whether or not they're actually going to follow through. And so sometimes during the initial stages of a relationship, they do follow up and they follow through, but it's a very short time and there's very little that's expected during that time. And when you get into change management, all of a sudden the agreements that we're making with each other are more difficult and they're harder to achieve. And how do we hold organizations accountable? And I would say that's probably one of the top reasons why clients get fired, or for us, we have a go, no go decision at 90 days. And for atomic revenue, it is a no go. If you are not going to be accountable and you are not going to commit and follow through with the things that you have agreed to do so that we can have successful outcomes for your business, I can't help you with that. If you do want to be accountable, I can educate. At Arriel, I really love that. Like, we can educate, we can train, we can help you put in technology tools that support you becoming a more accountable business culture. But if you're not willing to be accountable, then we are not going to be held accountable for the lack of results that you're going to achieve.
I am with you on that. It's just like same with coaching clients as well. Like I have to be able to ask better questions up front to say, like, is this person, apt for everything that we're going to go through when we work together? And I tell people up front, I'm going to push you, and that's okay. I will never push you so far past your comfort zone where it's totally uncomfortable. But by working with me, you know that there's some help that's to be needed and things that are to be done. And we're going to step through it, methodically, one by one till we get there, right? Like you're going to have to speak up in meetings. You're going to have to raise your hand for projects. You're going to have to, maybe figure out if there's a new sponsor that at work to help you. And same with businesses as well. When I was in tech, like who's the executive sponsor for this? That was my first question as an operator. Like, who's the executive sponsor for this so that I can go back to you with anything that is a challenge around accountability, handoffs, process change, all of it, so that we're working together, so that you're having conversations above my pay grade to make sure that these things can continue to move as smoothly as we can so that we can see the value in the ROI.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, for me, I'm deeply appreciative of working agreements, and I think to Tara's whole point, it becomes a little bit tricky, particularly if we're considering, this duality of like our internal ICPs versus external ICPs, but we get started with one agreement, right? And then as the data begins to come in, there's nuance that we have to consider that ultimately changes our interpretation of the original working agreement. And from that perspective, it's how do we make some of those internal changes without having to go back to the original contract and make addendums, et cetera, right? And I think the nuance, and we talked about this in our last conversation, all in the form of the explicit versus implicit nature of words and language, and how, well, I know what I meant when I said that, but what did you mean when you said that, right? And being able to identify that agreement, right, particularly as it relates to change, so that we are on the same page as we are doing the new thing that we're going to do based off of the original agreement that we had, right? And it becomes tricky because, and that's where I think we're really dealing with, a bit of that information overload in 2025, particularly as it relates to just the number of emails and phone calls and, conversations that we need to have, right? But they're important, and particularly having some of this information documented so that we are then able to reference, right? Which is why I'm so big on, and I think Atomic does such a great job of this, but it's the self-service, right? And ensuring that we have information documented so that teammates and even our clients, right, are able to access that information on their own. There is, I think, always room for improvement for all organizations, and that, if we've got an SOP, for example, it's, that's how we did things 5 years ago, 3 years ago. How do we bring that into the sort of the new consciousness of the organization and train teammates, right? And I think Google does such a great job of that, but obviously that's why they're the 800-pound gorilla in the room, right? But yeah, this is awesome. So I know we've only got about 15 more minutes, so I want to go into our next, and I think we're talking about this already. We're talking a bit about silos. So Arriel, I want you to get us kicked off, and then we're going to move to Tara and then Matthew. What routines or rituals help keep teams accountable to the ICP?
Um, so I'm gonna go back to my days in RevOps and what actually worked for me quite often. Anytime there was a new leader, so I'll start at the leadership level first, but anytime there was a new leader that joined our organization, making sure that I meet with them within their first like week or two. I try not to wait too long. And what I really try to understand when I meet with them, whether it was a walk and talk, a virtual meeting, if they were, not, in the same location, is what is your ultimate goal for your team? What are you trying to accomplish? how do you see my role supporting your goals and the KPIs that are all going to be important to you very, very soon. But just figuring that out and kind of understanding their mindset before we just try to force an existing process or force an existing playbook onto them, like seeing if there's already something that works, or and we just tweak it, or is this an overhaul? Because I also have to prepare myself and my team, like, okay, if this is an overhaul, I need to get everybody, on board with this change management before it actually happens. And then there's some that are like, let's just let it ride. Let's let it sit. It's working. It's not broken. Let's focus on some other things. And so really just starting with speaking to another human being. I always talk about the human-centered side of RevOps, but like starting with the conversation to understand where do we go from here. And then making it consistent. Can I join your team meetings to see what's happening? I'm just there to be a fly on the wall, not to make any strategic changes, but just understand how are people feeling, and then talking to their teams too. So whether it is, group or lunch or whatever, just making sure that we're all aligned and on the same page. And like, how are you feeling about this as you step through new processes, whether it is a holistic change or even if it is a tweak? How is this impacting people in the work that they're able to do or not do because of it? And then I put another note down here as well. I love a good retrospective. I love a good lessons learned. I will always talk about that as well, because in order to iterate and improve as businesses, as people, we have to understand the mistakes we've made in the past, own them, and then move forward.
Well said. Tara, so same question. Routines or rituals help keep teams accountable to the ICP?
So we've always broken apart silos in the nature of our work and working a lot of cross-department technology, cross-department process. I think feedback loops are probably one of my biggest, and I love the in-person opportunities to discuss feedback, but not everybody is equipped in how to communicate how they actually feel. And so I like a combination of technology feedback loops. So what are the KPIs that show up in sales to tell marketing whether or not the things that are happening in marketing are working for sales as far as the people who will actually buy? And what are the KPIs in service that give feedback back to sales about whether or not we're setting the right expectations and getting the right companies contracted that are having success with the service and actually completing, what we've agreed to deliver for the dollars we've agreed to exchange for it. I think that the expectations management in those cross-siloed data feedbacks also really helps us get a different perspective on ICP, because within our organizations, we would like to think that we're all on the same page, but how many conversations does sales really have with engineering about whether or not the hours quoted were correct or whether or not the timeline was accurate? And you have project managers and engineers or delivery that is being held accountable to these expectations set in sales. And, quite frequently, there never is the feedback loop. It's just like, we're just busy. We're heads down. I'm heads down making my sales targets. I'm heads down running my marketing campaign. I'm heads down delivering on whatever contract fell on my desk today, sold by people who have no idea what it actually takes to deliver this. And we never get those feedback loops in. So I love the lessons learned, best practices, debrief concept that's cross department to share. I love project closeouts, inviting marketing, sales, customer success, and the technical teams to project closeouts to hear the customer feedback, but also hear the experiences along the way so that everyone can adjust and really be committed to a shared ICP. experience. But then there's so much in the tech stack, and a lot of people don't want to do the administrative part of entering in the data or collecting the information that's needed for automated feedback loops where the data can actually be revealed. And I mean, I can argue with your opinion. I can disagree with the words that you have chosen, but I cannot disagree with the data that lands on my desk that says this is our retention rate for that particular customer category. Like that is a definitive number that is true for all of us. You can have all the opinions you want about it, but there's still a number. So we have to back up those opinion conversations, especially where different people have different capabilities to communicate their thoughts and feelings. We have to back it up with data.
I can't remember which rapper said men lie, women lie, numbers don't. But we'll just go ahead.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, bringing everybody into the room and using data as the North Star, the forcing function of the conversation is definitely where it's at. I use them to intentionally, like these feedback loops, like Tara was talking about, to intentionally slow people down and say, no, we have to focus. And your opinions matter, but we're focused on this. We're not going to talk about something way over there. That can be a separate conversation, meeting, etc. But this is what we're focusing on, having those agenda items and saying, is this a conversation or meeting where we're clarifying something or we're making a decision on how to move forward? Because coming into a brainstorm meeting versus a solutioning meeting where we're going to decide, it requires you to then think behind the scenes, what do you want to do about this particular thing? How will we move forward? And then bringing everyone into the room to kind of discuss what that could look like.
No doubt.
Well said.
Hey, Terrence, I'm gonna jump in and a couple of thoughts. I want to jump on both of your guys' comments. I love it. Yeah, Tara, look, data guy. So if it's not in CRM, if it's not in ERP, it is not true. And so but at the same time, that means that we also have to be willing to interrogate that data because yeah, I trust my numbers, but I have to be ready to be self-critical of the data. Like, is this trustworthy? Like, who is updating? How is it being updated? If we're pulling data from integrated sources, really good, but how confident are we in those sources or in the API calls? Are they occurring regularly, et cetera? But yeah, I just I love that. If it's not in the system, it's not true. And certainly, Arriel, to your point as well, that like making these feedback loops or these conversations a habit is critical so that you're coming into the conversation, what it is. And now if it is a brainstorming versus a retrospective or a handoff, like it becomes a habit if we're doing them in that cadence on a regular basis and people have bought in and understand the roles in those. I mean, certainly now I'm going to talk about it from a sales, weekly pipeline review cadence perspective, but that's very much on the sales side. However, it doesn't have to be. And so what I've done recently is, brought in marketing to that Monday morning pipeline review call, Friday, afternoon pipeline wrap call. And so we're all sort of sharing those ideas. And then at the same time, maybe we introduce or bring in account managers if it's handled differently from the customer success side, but into those conversations early enough on where they're ready for what's happening, or they can give advice or strategy. I mean, back to our earlier point, customer retention. If we have someone that is managing customers on a regular basis and we're going to build on their portfolio, having them part of that decision-making process, where this closed deal goes. So they also understand the entire backstory. And I think ultimately it all comes back to, I say it because I sit in RevOps, but we are the custodian. We are the maestro to integrate these sort of, or to balance these different personalities across departments and to break down those silos with those, embedding those habits and those rituals in those. I love sales. So it's the weekly pipeline reviews, et cetera. But it doesn't just have to be the pipeline review. It can be, the win-loss analysis, sort of a collective understanding, because, some of your customers churn. Like, well, why are they churning versus, why isn't a new customer joining? Having those collective voices in the room that are able to collaborate. And Ariel, absolutely spot on. If the habit is true and they understand what that conversation is about, makes it that much more impactful.
Mhm.
RevOps is the custodian, to be sure.
That was great. Well, team, we've got about 2 minutes left, so I would love us to maybe in 30 seconds or less answer this final question, as well as identify some ways for our audience to get in touch with you. And so this final question is, if you could offer one piece of advice to a revenue leader struggling with ICP clarity, what would it be? And the addendum is how people can get in touch with you. And Matthew, I'll get started. Arriel, you up next, and then Tara, you close us out.
Sure. And thank you, Terrence. Thank you, Ariel, Tara, as well. I mean, I appreciated this conversation very much. Short, sweet for me. I mean, I encourage you to start simple and pragmatic. And, it's not going to be perfect the first time, but, make sure you're working towards clarity and have some validation processes in place to check your results, and to be ready to refine, fine tune, keep it iterative, and then repeat. I guess that would be my advice. And in terms of getting in touch, always happy to jump in conversations here. I love the data. I love interrogating it. I love tweaking it and changing it. But Vistara Advisory is where I am. Find me on LinkedIn, and always welcome a conversation.
Thank you, Matthew. Arriel, same question. If you could offer one piece of advice to a revenue leader struggling with ICP clarity, what would it be?
I would say to put your investigator hat on. Do some digging, do some research, be scrappy, just investigate. Whether it's their pain points, if things are starting to change and you can't figure out why the data is telling you what it's telling you, investigate, lean in a little bit more rather than resisting the change that may be happening and may be positive. So that's the one thing I would say. Definitely investigate. And if folks are having a hard time figuring out their ICP, or if you are in the job market and trying to figure out what your ICP is with your next career move, like that's another thing that we strategize against too. Like how to identify the types of opportunities that are in best alignment with what you're looking for in your career. So to get in touch with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. My company is Infinitely Elevated, so you can direct message me, Arriel, and book a career strategy session so that you can talk with me about your specific expertise or gaps.
Awesome. And Miss Kinney,
Yeah,
please close us
so
out.
for me, ICP is really the culmination of all of the departments and parts of your company. It's where vision and operations and finance and delivery all come together with like what's the right fit that meets the needs of all of those elements of your business. So it's kind of a very complex Venn diagram where they all cross in the middle. And so for me, it's easiest to start with looking at where are the best fits for the criteria of all the different parts of the company. And then you can either narrow it or expand it from there. I love the concept of lookalikes. But I will come back to data. You have to have data to back up your decisions. And so when people talk to me about, but we really want the data, can you just get us the data? I always have to remind them that data lives in technology. So you have to have some place where the data is held. And the only way you can trust that data is if you have a process that puts it into the technology the same way every single time so that the data you get out of the technology is good. And that process only provides you with solid data in the technology if the people are willing to do the process. So are your people bought into the ICP so that they're willing to do the process? And 9 times out of 10, that's where the conversation stops, because until the people are bought in, the rest of it doesn't matter. So on the ICP, it's buy-in from all of the stakeholders. It has to serve all the different groups within your business, not just one department, not the easiest sale to close, right? That's not our ICP, because they're most likely to sign a contract. So I appreciate this conversation so much. This is a much more complex conversation than I think most people give it credit for. And you can find me on LinkedIn. That's my top social platform. Or just go to atomicrevenue.com. And if you are interested, we have a free revenue reality check. So you can have a conversation with Revenue Maven and answer some questions. And within 24 hours, you'll get a revenue reality check report that gives you kind of the next 90 days priorities across all the silos, departments within your business. And ICP might be one of them.
That's right. Well, goodness gracious, I'm just so lucky to be able to share space with all these bright minds. As a reminder, my name is Terrence Latimer. I am the community manager for the RevOps Masters LinkedIn community, which you are all invited to participate in. I think you will have well, I know you will have the opportunity to network with these bright minds in the form of Matthew, Arriel, and Tara. And my expectation is that we're probably going to have to do another one of these in the coming days. This is just too much fun and I learned too much. So just want to thank you all for being here once again. I really, really, really appreciate you all, and can't wait to catch you on the next one. All right, guys, appreciate you. Let's go ahead and wrap up here, and we will be in touch. But thank you. This was awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Terrence. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Tara.
Bye, guys.